Hello, amazing souls. A massive welcome. I am so excited to be here today with the beautiful Tobie Spears. We met in the online space only fairly recently, and I saw the amazing work that Tobie was doing, and I was so drawn to connect with her, and I am so grateful that I did. I've learned a bit about her story and about the incredible work she's doing, and I just had to bring it to you to educate as well and just share a little bit about this because it's really touched my heart. So, a massive welcome to you, Toby. So excited to be here.
Thank you. Thank you, Lee. It's so great to be here with you.
So, Toby's the founder of Be Humanitarian, and she's currently doing humanitarian work in Guatemala, which is what we're going to really be having a chat to about today. And me, I'd love to learn more as well. But before we dive into the actual work itself, I'd love, Toby, could we just start out by you sharing just a little bit about the backstory and what led you and or inspired you to do this work?
Yeah. So it's a question that gets asked a lot, like, why did you start this? And I think the easiest answer is because there was a need and I saw it and I just thought that we could fill it. I was like, yeah, we can help. We can make a difference. We can do something here. And so I also grew up in the States and in a country where we have a lot of social services. And I'm a recipient of that. My mom raised us by herself. You know, she raised us on welfare, and we had like social services that protected us from being homeless or from being hungry. And what I learned was that in a lot of developing countries, well, that they don't have that. So if you're hungry, you're hungry. If you are, like if you can't pay your rent, then you're homeless. So I just felt so grateful for all of the services that were provided to me as a child. And I just knew that we could make a difference in somebody else's life.
I love that. It's just so needed. I know you shared with me this little piece about how when you first came across Guatemala, when you were deciding on a holiday, like you wanted to do something that was impactful with your family. Because I know you started doing this work with your daughters. Can you tell me about how that started and how your family got on board with you?
Yeah, they're really good sports. And so I just dragged them along. I firmly believe that getting out of your bubble, like out of your comfort zone, is where growth occurs. And I believe that is for families. So I was so excited to do something with our family that was separate from the extended family, from our friends, from our neighbors and our community. And I thought that by doing an adventure outside of the States, that it would just be the four of us. And if something went wrong, then it would be like we had to like call each other, like it was just leaning on each other. And I really wanted that experience for my husband and I and for our daughters. And so I talked all of them into taking a road trip. And if you know the States, then you'll know like Utah and then all of the states into where you touch Mexico. So we drove from Utah through north, like through Colorado, through New Mexico, through Texas, and all of Mexico. So we did a little road trip. It's about 3,000 miles, so it's about like crossing the U.S. And we spent 12 days in the car, just having like a grand adventure.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. So I'd love to know why Guatemala? Like what about that community? Because there's so many places that need help. Why did you
I know.
choose why did you choose Guatemala?
I truthfully, I'm not sure if I chose Guatemala or if Guatemala chose me.
Mhm.
So it's up for debate. Um, and I didn't realize until we got there the amount of need that we were walking into. So Guatemala consistently ranks about the fourth most malnourished country in the world.
Wow.
So like there's just like generational malnutrition, generational poverty, generational stunting. And so, there's just so much work to be done. I firmly believe that there could be, another million Be Humanitarians doing what we do, and they're, to cover the needs. There, there's just a lot, as you mentioned. And so we went to Guatemala to serve and to have an adventure and to grow stronger together. And when we left, I just was determined that there was a big amount that we could do ourselves, that I could do, that we could make a positive impact in the community.
So beautiful. So can you share a bit about like the specifics on what you do when you're there? Like how do you help?
Yeah. Um, it does change. So like flexibility is a big must when
Mhm.
running your own grassroots nonprofit. And so our programs are involved with conservation work, and that means like we're working with turtles during the right season. We get to go and support the turtles and help collect eggs and help release baby turtles as a conservation project. We also work a lot with like spaying and neutering cats and dogs, and feeding programs for cats and dogs, because in a developing country, ask yourself the question, like, if you couldn't feed your kids, would you be really concerned about feeding an animal? Like, it's hard for some of us to have that conversation in our minds. And a lot of times it's really difficult for volunteers to see, these street dogs that are just gaunt and starving. And they're like, but why is this? Why is this like this? Like, I'm like, because you're working in a developing country and people can't feed their families, so that the animals are going to be last. So we do a lot of like conservation work with sterilization for cats and dogs. I'm a firm believer. And then we have feeding programs that we've been able to implement and get started. And so we've got like a couple of projects going on as far as animals who can't speak for themselves. And then we've got a small community that we get to work with intimately with the kiddos in our community and supporting them and supporting their family units.
Mm. Such impactful work. I'm really excited to follow your journey and potentially come with you on a trip. It's really pulling at my heartstrings. So, what have been some of the biggest challenges that you've faced while working like in a poverty-stricken area? Like how do you overcome the challenges when you're there?
Yeah, so you asked, I didn't really like fully answer your question about specifics. So we work with nutrition and education and income creation. So like those are our main focuses with our families. So we were working with kiddos that weren't eating before we got involved in their lives. And so these kiddos also didn't have the opportunity to attend school because school is a required cost, and so it's a barrier to entry if you have to pay for school. And then creating income for our families, it's very, very tricky, but they don't have career opportunities like first world countries do, and it's just so difficult that if you live in a teeny little village and you don't have a car and you don't read and write and you didn't go to school because your parents didn't go to school and they also don't know how to read and write, then you're just perpetuating the problem. But in small villages there are not jobs. So the truth is income creation is a very, very tricky part of the puzzle. So that's the challenge. Like the challenge is keeping our family units safe and secure and creating healthy, strong, rambunctious kiddos that have the opportunities to attend school, and that are healthy and eating well. And then just really that fundamental part of keeping the family safe and secure. Um, because that's what I learned. And I didn't know this before. I went to Guatemala and we were volunteering in an orphanage. And the director told me that many of the orphans at the orphanage had living parents. I was flabbergasted. I like in my mind, if you say you have, that this is an orphanage, to me that meant that they had no family. But that wasn't the case. And in lots of developing countries and in Guatemala, parents have to make that decision. If they can't feed their children and can't afford to send them to school, then they have that choice to place them in an orphanage so that they can get their 3 meals a day and that they can get their education. So I there's a lot of people that are like working in orphanages and working in orphanages, and I was like, no, no, no. Like we need to go down a level. Like we need to support the family. We need to support the family so that these moms and these dads don't ever have to make that choice. Don't ever have to say, I can't feed my kids. I need to send them to the orphanage. So we have challenges galore, Leigh. Challenges upon challenges, and we just keep going. We keep fighting.
Yeah. And I just take my hat off to you and all of the volunteers as well that are up for the challenge and continuously be there for them. It's just, yeah, it's so beautiful. And it must be rewarding as well. Like, I'd love to share, aside from the challenges, like maybe a moment that's fully touched your heart where you actually saw firsthand, the real positive impact of your work in that community.
Yeah, I mean, really, there's countless. Like what we've been able to do in our community is create a trust relationship where the community can reach out to each other and to me when there's an issue. I mean, there's things that I never thought would happen. Like, you go into this thinking, oh, we're going to feed kids, we're going to send them to school, we're going to be able to watch them all go to university, and it's going to be like happy, and we've buried kiddos. We've had funerals for 5-year-old little boys and for brand new babies, and it is gut wrenching. Like sometimes it's just gut wrenching work. And so we have this tremendous amount of love and respect for each other and the work that we're doing. So firsthand, I mean, just to walk down the streets and the kiddos and the families and the community, they're just beaming with gratitude. And one thing that really touched me this time was one of our volunteers. It was my niece and my sister, and they got to come for the first time ever. It was so fun to have them. And my niece she was speaking to one of the moms, and she mentioned that she really loved her earrings. She was like, oh, those are so beautiful. And a lot of Guatemalans make very beautiful like beads. And so she just mentioned that she really loved her earrings. And one of our moms just took them out of her ears and handed them to my niece. And like that, we don't have that kind of like selflessness very often, like, oh, this will bring you joy. Let me give this to you. We just don't see that very often where I live. And so it was just so beautiful. And I've had those beautiful heartfelt moments happened so many times. And sometimes there are just no words. And sometimes we just stand with tears, streaming down our eyes. And sometimes that's okay, to have no words.
Mm. Yeah, I'm feeling like I'm just holding myself together here. It's so emotional listening to your story and all of that. Um, do you have, sorry, pull myself together. Do you have any long-term goals that you want to achieve in this particular community? Excuse me.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no need to be excused. Yeah, our long-term goals is to send our kiddos to university. Like primarily, that's our long-term goal. We want healthy, happy kiddos that have opportunities that their parents and their grandparents and their great-grandparents didn't have. Like, bottom line, that's our goal.
Mm.
And so we have sponsors that sponsor monthly. We have corporations that get involved and sponsor monthly. We have foundations that sponsor annually. So, like, you know, you can't do any work without money.
Yeah.
So we always, we're always like garnering awesome, awesome sponsors, awesome volunteers. We have a big goal right now that to increase our sponsorship and increase our donors. And we have a piece of land in our community, and we're saving and fundraising to build a community center there. And it's a pretty big, grandiose goal. And like it just would open so many doors for our community and for Be Humanitarian. So it's just like that's the big, big goal.
Amazing. Amazing. And like you've been doing this like a long time now. So you would have seen families grow. Like that must be amazing for you to see the young kids be growing up and have that kind of connection with them.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just like it's the most beautiful thing. It's really just the most beautiful thing. You have two kiddos, right?
Yeah.
I have two kiddos. I have two girls. Um, and I once received the kindest message from a man who knows my work. And he said, like, you are the mother to many. And I was like, oh, like I wanted to have two children. Like my mom had 8 children and I never wanted to have 8 children because that just was so many, so much work. But I was like, yeah, these are my kiddos. Like I worry about them. I work for them countless hours, just to make sure that we have sponsors that are helping cover their costs and cover their needs. So yeah, I have two biological children and then a lot more.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So has your perspective like on life or motherhood shifted since doing this work?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I live a very privileged life, and it's just based on the border, the right continent, the right border, like in my opinion, that was the determining factor. If I had been born in a different border, my life circumstances would have been different. My mom wouldn't have had social services to get us lunches. We received breakfast at school for free breakfast. We received lunch at school with free lunch. Like there were just so many services provided to us because we lived in this country. So
Mm.
the perspective definitely has changed. I am much, much more grateful.
Mm.
Um, then I think a lot of times there's a lot of complaints about specific countries and how they could be doing something different. I'm like, ooh,
Mm.
go spend a little chunk of time in a developing country where where education isn't required and where kids don't get the choice. And don't if you can't afford a pencil, you don't get to go to school. Like we really are just so blessed.
Mm.
So I do believe that that creates an opportunity for us and an obligation for us that those who can should, so that we can give, then we should give.
Mm.
So I've gained a deep appreciation and an immense amount of just awe
Mm.
at these communities, at the work, the constant, continual, just work that they do, just to barely make it.
Mm. Mm. So I know you talked about before that you rely on sponsors and like the donations and things. So how do you inspire other people to, or how can people get on board with you? Where can they find you to be able to, whether it's like, does it have to be huge? Does it like small? every little bit counts, whether it's just through a couple of dollars here and there, or whether it's a sponsorship of somebody, or whether it's actually physically going with you to these places like volunteering. Tell us how people can learn more about that.
Yeah, so it's really quite easy. We've got sponsorship opportunities for like really whatever you can afford. As little as $20 a month, that pays for one of our kiddos to have English school for the whole month. And
Mm.
that's 20 hours of English lessons in a month. So, like, it's a really good program. We've got all sorts of different sponsorship opportunities. And what's really been fun is getting businesses involved. We've got awesome, like, partners with businesses that have gotten their employees involved. And, so there's just this real camaraderie, this real deep appreciation that everyone that's coming to work is coming to work to do something that's bigger than a paycheck.
It's
It's
amazing.
bigger than, just like your 9 to 5, that they all are working hard, knowing that they're working to support a community. So that's been beautiful. And, we've got just whatever somebody wants to do. If they want to brainstorm with me and have a conversation about, we've received books, we've received, like we've had a lot of international travelers that when I'm not in Guatemala, and they reach out and they actually go to our little village and they spend a couple days with our families, and I'm able to create like just a 2 or 3 day volunteer program for them. So we've had people from Europe, we've had people that I've never met, that I probably will never meet, and they're like, wait, I'm going to be there, can I arrange to be to volunteer with Be Humanitarian for 2 days? So there's just like, I don't want to say there's like endless opportunities, but there are endless opportunities to get involved. Like if you happen to be in Guatemala, if you want to donate, if you want to sponsor a kiddo, if you want to join us in Guatemala, like there's a lot of fun, really amazing ways to get involved.
Mm. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. And so I'll have all your details above or below this video for you to get in touch. And I just feel so honored to just being able to have this conversation with you and learn more about what you do. It's incredible work, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart for you, your volunteers, for everyone that gets involved. And I'm so grateful to be connected with you. So thank you so much for your time. So it doesn't, yeah, like I said, any little bit counts, even just to share this video, share education as well. And there'll be a link to be able to connect with Tobie in and around this video. So thank you, Tobie, so much for your time, and have an amazing day or evening wherever you are in the world.
Thank you, Leigh.